What if Kurt Cobain had not left? In a corner of time where the inevitable was avoided, the history of grunge took an unexpected turn. Kurt Cobain did not become a myth, but a survivor. He did not fade out at 27. Instead, he chose the hardest path, staying. Instead of a farewell letter, he left behind a life rebuilt note by note, step by step, far from the noise that once drowned him. In this other world, there was no funeral, only a second act. But what happens when a legend chooses to live, not as an idol, but as a man? How does art change when it is written from healing instead of rage? What place do those who choose to heal have in a world that applauds tragic falls? And what if the most revolutionary thing were not to leave young, but to grow old creating with honesty? What if Cobain had not left behind silence, but a voice that never stopped searching for its truth? On April 5, 1994, in our timeline, the world broke with a single piece of news. Kurt Cobain, leader of Nirvana and accidental symbol of an entire generation that could not find its place, had been found in his home in Seattle. He was 27 years old. He left a letter in a hole that still burns in the hard rock. But in another world, where time decided to give a second chance, someone, perhaps a friend, perhaps a stranger, perhaps his daughter in a photograph, knocked on the door in time. And in that universe, Cobain lived. Recovery was not magical. Kurt, instead of becoming a legend, became a patient. He spent months in a clinic in Arizona, far from cameras, fans, and noise. He did not shave. He did not play the guitar. He did not write. He slept badly. He spoke little. He feared silence, but he also feared sound. He detoxed from pain, from emptiness. Some doctors said his brain was broken, but in truth, it was exhausted. His departure from Nirvana was never official, but was inevitable. Dave Grohl understood. Chris Novoselic did too. Music could wait. In 1995, he reappeared at a small show in Olympia, Washington. There was no announcement, no posters, no press. He simply walked on stage like a ghost with a guitar. No one expected him, but no one had forgotten him. He sat on a stool with an old, barely tuned guitar and played 3 songs no one knew. They were new, fragile, as if they were still being written while he sang them. He did not scream. He did not smash anything. He just sang, with a trembling voice, as if those songs were the only thing holding him together. Some swear they saw him cry. Others say he did not. But everyone agrees on one thing. It was him, and he was wounded, but alive. After the 3rd song, he stood up, said thank you, and disappeared through a side door. No rehearsed applause, no clear photos. Like an apparition. Like a breath. That moment, small, raw, true, was the beginning of something new. The start of his second act. In this new life, Kurt decided not to be what the world expected. He rejected interviews with MTV, refused to appear in magazines. He moved to a cabin near the forest in Oregon, where he lived with Courtney Love, in a relationship not perfect, but determined, and his daughter Frances Bean, who was already 2 years old. He painted, wrote in old notebooks, composed melodies he showed to no one. For a while, people thought he had retired completely. But in 1996, the surprise arrived. Ashes, Nirvana's 4th album. It was not grunge. It was something different, a strange mix of dirty folk, ambient noise, and lyrics that seemed to whisper rather than sing. Intimate lyrics about fatherhood, guilt, redemption, and fear, all wrapped in a heavy and honest atmosphere, with a cover that showed a photograph taken by his daughter, with no band name or flashy logos, only a sentence written as if someone had scribbled it in pain. Sometimes, not dying is the real punishment. And although sales were only moderate and many fans felt something had broken, others understood immediately, because Ashes was not an album to make noise or sell millions. It was a record that bled, that breathed slowly, that did not explode because it had been created to heal. Between 1997 and 2005, Kurt stopped looking like a rock star and became something closer to a modern monk, a curator of broken souls who, instead of seeking fame, founded Lunatic Records, an independent label that did not chase radio hits but hidden truths in garages, in young voices full of pain and distortion, in sound impossible to classify that spoke more with emotion than with notes. He produced records that might not fill stadiums, but touched deep fibers, records that sold little but transformed much. And in each one, he left his personal mark, a handwritten letter to the artist, an intimate note asking them to keep going, to resist, not to burn out, because that was making music for real. In 2001, he took part in a documentary about mental health in musicians. He appeared with an unkempt beard, tired eyes, and a serenity that looked nothing like the frantic boy of the 90s. He said, "I wasn't saved because I was strong. I was saved because someone didn't leave. Because someone listened to me cry when I didn't even know I was doing it." In 2004, Kurt Cobain secretly met with Dave Grohl. It was not to revive Nirvana, nor to please anyone. It was to make music without pressure, without labels, without a name. They recorded strange sessions, a rare mix of jazz, spoken word, and industrial sounds. Only a few songs came out, under an almost invisible pseudonym, Blue Candle. At first, no one noticed, but the internet always finds the clues. When people heard his voice in a song called 7 Years Awake, chaos erupted. And Cobain, far from hiding, wrote on his blog, "Yes, it's me. But this time, I'm not playing for you. I'm playing for myself." The world changed with his presence. His survival prevented many other tragedies. In 2005, he created a foundation that provided free psychological support to young musicians. He was one of the first to speak openly about media pressure, about depression as an invisible wound. Artists like Amy Winehouse cited him as their example of struggle. In 2007, he had a public conversation with Chester Bennington at a festival, where both spoke without scripts about what it feels like to not want to wake up. Kurt was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2012, not for his music, but for his humanitarian work. He rejected the nomination, saying that awards are a beautiful way to hide the fact that we are still broken. At 50 years old, he released Letters to Frances, an entire album made of letters to his daughter. They were not sad. They were warm, clumsy, full of poorly spoken affection and unfiltered truths. Like him, some songs sounded like farewell, others like reconciliation. There was laughter in the middle of pain. The most remembered was "You Saved Me Without Trying." The music video was just him, sitting on the porch of his house in Olympia, guitar in hand, the wind messing up his hair. No makeup, no production. Just Kurt, a fixed shot, and the sound of birds in the background. He never stopped creating, but he never returned to the spotlight either. He became something different. Distant lighthouse. He no longer shone with force, but if you were lost, there he was, guiding in silence with a broken and honest song. In 2024, Nirvana reunited one last time, only to play All Apologies at a charity concert. When they finished, Kurt looked at the crowd, raised his guitar, and said, "Thank you for not letting me die as a myth. Thank you for letting me live as a man." What if the great ones didn't have to fall to become legends? What if martyrs stayed and taught others that living broken is braver than dying perfect? What if the scream that once tore a generation apart now served so that no one would ever have to scream alone again?